All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving right into a really fascinating tale of two fathers. It's this incredible contrast. You've got one father who is highly educated, literally has a PhD, but is constantly struggling financially. That's the poor dad. And then on the flip side, you have the other father who didn't even finish middle school, yet he built just immense wealth. The rich dad. And the crazy thing is, the core difference between them had absolutely nothing to do with academic intelligence. It was entirely about their financial literacy. So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 1, the rat race trap, then 2, assets versus liabilities. After that, we'll learn how to 3, mind your own business, uncover 4, the corporate tax secret, discuss 5, overcoming financial obstacles, and finally wrap up with 6, steps to financial freedom. It's a logical, step-by-step journey out of the rat race to shift your mindset from an employee to an investor. Now, right out of the gate, we see this absolutely massive contrast between these two mindsets. The poor dad approach basically tells you to push a giant, heavy boulder up a hill, study hard, find a super safe corporate job, avoid all risk, and just work for money. But the rich dad mindset, it flips that completely on its head. It's more like leaning back in a hammock. Don't work for money, learn how to make money work for you by acquiring assets and taking calculated risks. Okay, Section 1, the rat race trap, working for money. Let's examine the universal problem that keeps most hardworking people financially trapped. Kiyosaki uses this brilliant metaphor of a donkey and a carrot to show exactly how fear and desire trap us. Imagine a rider just holding a carrot right in front of a donkey's nose. The donkey keeps pushing forward, working harder and harder, hoping to finally get that carrot, but it never actually reaches it. Well, in our lives, that carrot is money. We're terrified of not having enough, which forces us to work harder. But then, right when we finally get paid, desire kicks in. We start imagining all the cool stuff we can buy, so we spend it all, run out of cash, and boom, the cycle repeats. Honestly, we've all been that donkey at some point, right? Kiyosaki calls this the rat race, a vicious cycle where you work harder only to dig yourself a deeper hole. Moving on to Section 2, assets versus liabilities. Keep it simple. Now for the core solution, where Kiyosaki redefines financial literacy. So, what is the absolutely crucial takeaway here? You have to strip away all that crazy, complex banking jargon. Just keep it simple. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket. A liability, that's something that takes money out of your pocket. That is literally it. If you want to be rich, you buy assets. If you want to be poor or middle class, you buy liabilities that you mistakenly think are assets. If you look at the cash flow patterns of the different classes here, it's wild. For the middle class, their income relies 100% on a salary, and as soon as that paycheck hits, it instantly flows right into the liability column, paying for mortgages, car loans, credit cards, before totally bleeding out as daily expenses. There's literally nothing left to build up the asset column. The rich, however, focus entirely on that asset column. Their real estate, their stocks, or their businesses generate enough income to easily cover their expenses without them ever having to clock in for a paycheck. I really want you to ask yourself this question right now, because, newly married couples do this all the time. They trap themselves in the rat race by confusing a massive liability for an asset. They combine their salaries, think, wow, we're rich, and immediately go out and buy a bigger house with a bigger mortgage, higher property taxes, brand new furniture, the whole shebang. Instead of buying an asset, they've actually just anchored themselves to a massive expense that forces them to work even harder and longer. All right, Section 3, mind your own business. Focus on assets. Let's look at a brilliant pivot in how you spend your energy. Think about Ray Kroc for a second, the founder of McDonald's. He famously asked a group of MBA students what business they thought he was in. Well, everyone laughed, obviously assuming he was in the hamburger business, but Kroc corrected them. His business wasn't hamburgers at all. It was real estate. The primary business of McDonald's was actually buying the most valuable commercial land underneath all those burger franchises. And that highlights a vital difference between your profession and your business. Your profession is what you do for 40 hours a week to get a paycheck, right? Maybe you're a doctor, an engineer, an accountant, but that's not your business. That's your employer's business. Your business is your asset column. Kiyosaki isn't telling you to go quit your day job right now, no. He's telling you to keep your job, keep your expenses low, but start minding your own business by buying real, income-generating assets with your leftover money. Next up is Section 4, the corporate tax secret, playing the game. Let's neutrally explore Kiyosaki's specific and sometimes controversial perspective on how the wealthy play the tax game. Now, historically speaking, permanent income taxes are actually a pretty modern invention. Kiyosaki points out that the concept of taxes was originally sold to the public using this sort of Robin Hood mentality, punish the rich to give to the poor. However, according to the source material, once governments developed a taste for that tax revenue, it inevitably expanded. And ultimately, it ended up draining the middle class and the poor, while the rich just found clever ways to protect their wealth. Just reporting purely on Kiyosaki's philosophy here. He explains how capitalists basically outsmart the system using corporations as legal shields. It's a completely different sequence than what an employee goes through. An employee earns money, gets heavily taxed on it right away, and then has to try and live on whatever is left. A corporation, on the other hand, earns money, spends what it can on business expenses, think cars, insurance, travel, and then pays taxes, only on the remaining profit. It's a huge structural advantage that the rich use to accelerate their wealth. Let's hit Section 5. Overcoming financial obstacles. Break the blocks. Because we have to acknowledge that just knowing the mechanics of assets and taxes isn't enough. You really have to overcome some deep psychological blockers.
Look, we all have that Chicken Little voice inside us, screaming that the sky is falling. Listening to your own doubt, or all those cynical people around you who love to say, well, if it was that easy, everyone would do it, will absolutely drain your energy. Another massive obstacle? Laziness disguised as busyness. You know exactly what that is. Staying completely consumed by your daily job and chores as a really convenient excuse to avoid taking the time to actually fix your financial life. It keeps you completely blind to massive financial opportunities.
So, how do we break these bad habits? Well, the trick here is this highly counterintuitive sequence. Most people pay everyone else first, right? The landlord, the credit card company, the utility bill, and they just save whatever tiny little amount is left for themselves. But Kiyosaki says you must pay yourself first. Put money into your asset column before you pay your bills. And if you fall short on cash for the bills, don't you dare dip into your savings. Let the pressure of those unpaid bills build up. Feel that heat. Because that pressure is exactly what will force your brain to wake up, get wildly resourceful, and figure out creative new ways to generate additional income. And finally, Section 6, Steps to Financial Freedom. Awaken your genius. Let's look at the rapid-fire execution steps to start building your asset column today. 3. That is the exact number of skills Kiyosaki says you need to become a true investor who creates their own opportunities. First, you got to learn how to find opportunities that everyone else has totally missed. Second, you must learn to raise money, because no, you don't always need a bank. And third, you have to learn how to organize smart people. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, you just need to hire them. To actually awaken that financial genius, it really comes down to protecting your mind and keeping disciplined. You gotta find your deep emotional why, that core reason that gives you fuel when things get incredibly tough. From there, it's about consciously choosing what to do daily with your time and money, carefully choosing your friends, and learning from both the wealthy and the poor. It's really about mastering self-discipline, constantly learning faster than the changing world around you, and ultimately paying experts well because their knowledge is exactly what makes you money. Ultimately, Kiyosaki teaches that money is kind of just an illusion. It only means what we want it to mean. The true foundation of wealth isn't real estate or stocks, for sure. It's your financial intelligence. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. Knowing all of this, who are you really making rich tomorrow morning when you clock in? And are you finally ready to stop digging and start building?